I'm a 41-year-old man, and I recently ended a 6-year relationship with my now ex-girlfriend, who's 39. Our relationship had been a good one for the most part. We enjoyed spending time together, had similar interests, and our friends and families got along well. After 4 years together, I felt that it was time to take the next step. I wanted to propose to her and begin planning our future as a married couple. I took the proposal very seriously and made sure to get the blessing of her family and close friends before moving forward. They were all supportive and happy for us, so I felt confident that this was the right time. We were on a family vacation, and I thought this would be the perfect opportunity to make the moment even more special. After a wonderful dinner with her family, I got down on one knee and asked her to marry me. I had imagined this moment many times, thinking she would say yes with joy and excitement. However, to my surprise, she said no. Not a hard no, but no, not yet. That answer hurt me deeply. I didn't expect her to say no, and the rejection was hard to process, especially in front of her family. I felt embarrassed and disappointed, trying to keep my emotions in check. I quietly excused myself and went back to our room to be alone for a while. Later that evening, she came to our room and asked why I had left the group. I told her that I was upset by her response and that I needed time to think. We had a long, heartfelt conversation where I explained how much the proposal meant to me and why her refusal hurt me. She then told me that she didn't think I was ready for the commitment of marriage just yet, and that was why she said no. Although it was painful, I listened to her reasoning and tried to be understanding. I was raised with the belief that when someone says no, they mean it. It's not a maybe or something to negotiate. But she asked me to give it more time, to wait until we were in a more stable place before revisiting the idea of marriage. I agreed to her request because I loved her and wanted to respect her feelings. Over the next 8 to 10 months, she began dropping hints that she was warming up to the idea of marriage. She'd make comments like, "I can't wait for our wedding," or "Our wedding is going to be spectacular," and even, "I'm so excited for my dad to walk me down the aisle." These statements made me believe that she was finally ready and that the stability she wanted had been achieved. I started feeling optimistic again about our future together. A little over a year after my first proposal, I decided to try again. This time, I wanted it to be a more intimate moment, just the two of us. I planned a romantic date night, and after a lovely evening together, I opened the ring box once more and asked her to marry me. But instead of the joyful acceptance I was hoping for, she went silent again. Then she said, "No, not yet. Maybe a little further down the line." At that moment, I realized that something had shifted inside me. It was as if her second rejection caused me to fall out of love with her. I know it sounds harsh, but it was the truth. I had been holding on to the hope that we would get married, and her repeated refusal made me feel like we weren't on the same page anymore. It wasn't just the rejection of the proposal. It was a realization that we didn't share the same vision for our future. When we got back home, I spent the night in the guest bedroom, unable to sleep. I thought long and hard about our relationship and what I wanted out of life. The next morning, I told her how I felt. I explained that I take marriage very seriously and that I didn't want to be led on any longer. I couldn't handle another rejection, and I wasn't willing to keep waiting indefinitely for her to be ready. I told her that this time her no was final for me and that we needed to end the relationship. I gave her a month to find a new place to live and move out. Since then, I've been getting flooded with texts and emails from her friends and family, calling me a heartless bastard. They think I'm being cruel for not giving her more time and for breaking up with her over this. They've accused me of being callous and too harsh. On the other hand, my friends have been supportive and understand why I ended things. They know that I was clear about wanting marriage and that I didn't want to be strung along forever. It's been tough dealing with the backlash from her loved ones. They don't seem to understand that I wasn't willing to wait endlessly for something I believed was important. I felt like I gave her enough time and that after 6 years, we should have been on the same page by now. But her continued rejection showed me that we weren't, and I had to make the difficult decision to walk away. I still wonder if I made the right choice. Maybe I could have given her more time, but in my heart, I knew that I couldn't keep waiting for her to be ready. Marriage is something I take very seriously, and I didn't want to feel like a show pony chasing after a carrot that was always just out of reach. You've already done more than enough to move on. It's time to recognize that blocking out those who keep dragging you back to the past and focusing on your future is what you need. Dwelling on what others think, especially those who have no part in your current life, will only keep you from moving forward. Here's a situation that I've been thinking about a lot lately. Am I the bad guy for being pregnant after my marriage ended because I didn't want kids? My ex-husband and I were together for 20 years. From the time we were teenagers, 15 years old, until we were 35. It was a long and mostly happy relationship, but in the final years, things became strained. The main reason was that my husband changed his mind about wanting children. When we first got together, we were kids ourselves, and children weren't even a topic of conversation. But as we entered our mid-20s, we began talking about it and realized we were both on the same page. We didn't want kids. That shared decision was a relief for both of us, and our marriage thrived for many years based on that mutual understanding. However, as time passed, my husband began to feel differently. He started to express his desire to have a family, something I couldn't wrap my head around. I was firm in my decision not to have kids, and this became a growing point of tension between us. Despite this, we still loved and respected each other enough to not let things fall apart in an ugly way. We made the difficult decision to separate before our relationship reached a breaking point. Neither of us wanted to destroy the beautiful memories we had created together by letting our marriage turn toxic, so we ended it with as much grace as possible. When he moved out, I was hit by a harsh reality. I realized that we hadn't been in love for a while. It wasn't an overnight change, but something that had crept in over time, and acknowledging it was heartbreaking. To fall out of love with someone who had been a fundamental part of my life for so long was a pain I had never anticipated. It felt like mourning a part of myself. Within a year of our divorce, my ex-husband met someone new. Soon after, she was pregnant, and before long, they were married with 2 children. Though he and his new wife aren't very active on social media, I would occasionally catch glimpses of his life through friends or online. I saw him holding his children, playing with them, and looking genuinely happy. And as happy as I was for him, it also made me feel deeply alone. It wasn't just him. Everywhere I looked, my siblings, my friends, everyone around me was having children. Their lives were transforming, and their priorities shifted. Suddenly, I felt like the odd one out. I wasn't part of that world, and that realization cut me deeply. Despite having a loving family and close friends, I began to feel more and more isolated. People I had always been close to now had a new focus. Their children. Their worlds revolved around their families, and while I understood it, it still left me feeling increasingly lonely. About 3 years ago, I met my fiancée, and I fell in love again. This time, I felt truly content. We talked about our future together, and for the first time, I found myself wanting to have a child. I told him, and he was thrilled. Now, here I am, 33 weeks pregnant, preparing for a new chapter in my life. I feel hopeful and excited, but also nervous. Recently, my ex-husband found out about my pregnancy, and it stirred up unexpected emotions. He's angry. He reached out, saying he wants to meet and talk, claiming I lied to him about not wanting children. His sister told me that he feels betrayed, as if I deceived him during our marriage. I didn't lie. At that point in my life, I truly didn't want children. Our marriage ended because of that, and I stood by my decision then. But life has a way of changing people. The years following our divorce changed me in ways I couldn't have predicted. Watching everyone around me start families, feeling that deep loneliness, and growing in my own understanding of what I wanted for my future, it all shifted my perspective. It wasn't an instant change, but a gradual realization that I wanted to experience motherhood. I never intended to hurt him. I can see why he might feel upset, but I also believe it's not my responsibility to explain this to him anymore. He has his family, his children, and he appears to be happy. I don't understand why my pregnancy affects him so much. His sister insists that he feels betrayed, but I find it hard to grasp, especially since he has the family he always wanted. That being said, I've also questioned myself. Was loneliness a good enough reason to want a child? Did the pressure of seeing everyone around me with children push me into this decision? I've thought about it a lot. I don't believe I'm having a child just because I was lonely. I genuinely want to experience motherhood and build a family with my fiancé. But I can't deny that the feeling of isolation played a role in how my desires evolved over time. Some people might say that having a child because everyone else is doing it is a mistake. Parenting is not just about filling a void or wanting to feel like you belong. It's about commitment, hard work, and sacrifice. Children require love, care, and attention every moment of the day, especially during the tough times. When they cry at 3 a.m., when they throw tantrums in public, or when they grow into rebellious teenagers who challenge everything you say. Truly wanting to be a parent is what helps you get through those challenging moments and still feel joy at the end of the day. Reflecting on all this, I've come to understand that both my ex-husband and I need to fully move on. We were together for 2 decades, and while we've both started new lives, there's still a lingering connection that keeps resurfacing. It's time to sever those ties once and for all. He has a new family now, and I'm building my own. Why I changed my mind about having children is no longer his business, just as I no longer concern myself with why he changed his mind all those years ago. Our time is over, and both of us need to focus on the lives we are creating now. My wife and I have been married for 3 years, and we had a clear plan to wait a bit longer before having kids. We both agreed that we wanted to enjoy our time together, focus on our careers, and take the opportunity to travel while we still could. Kids were definitely part of our future, but we hadn't set a specific timeline. It felt like we were both on the same page, content with the stage of our lives for now. A couple of months ago, everything changed when my wife told me she was pregnant. I was taken aback. It wasn't that I didn't want children, just that the timing felt off. I was happy for her, but also completely shocked. I couldn't figure out how this had happened since, as far as I knew, she was still on birth control. That's when she dropped a bombshell on me. She had stopped taking her birth control without telling me. She said she had felt ready to start a family and assumed I would be fine with it once a baby was on the way. To say I was blindsided would be an understatement. I understand that feelings and plans can change over time, but I couldn't shake the sense that a major life decision had been made without me. It wasn't just that she was pregnant. It was the fact that she had gone ahead and made that choice unilaterally, without even having a conversation about it. It felt like the decision had been taken out of my hands entirely. I told her that while I loved her and would undoubtedly love our child, I couldn't match her level of excitement about the pregnancy because it didn't feel like something we had decided together. I explained that it felt more like her decision, not ours, and that has left me feeling unsettled. Now, she's upset with me. She said that I'm being distant and cold, and she can't understand why I'm not as thrilled as she is. I've talked to friends about it, and opinions are split. Some of them tell me I should just let it go and embrace the fact that we're going to have a child, but others agree that this was a serious breach of trust. I'm really struggling to move past the fact that I didn't have a say in something so monumental. I can't help but feel a mix of excitement for the future and frustration over how this all unfolded. I don't know if I'm being unreasonable for feeling this way, but it's hard to shake the sense of betrayal. In another situation, my mother-in-law passed away 3 years ago, and every year since, my wife and I have marked the anniversary of her death by visiting her grave. This ritual is deeply meaningful for my wife because she was incredibly close to her mother. On the anniversary, we go to the cemetery where my wife leaves flowers on the grave, and we sit together for hours in quiet reflection. It's a solemn day, and I do my best to support her emotionally, holding her and offering whatever comfort I can. It's a difficult time for her, and I've always tried to be there fully for her as she grieves. Recently, My sister announced that she was getting married, and she asked me to be her man of honor. We've always been extremely close, especially since we endured an emotionally abusive father together, and now we've gone no contact with him. So, when my sister found her partner, someone who truly makes her happy, I was thrilled for her. I was excited about the wedding. But then I received the save-the-date notice and realized that her wedding day falls on the anniversary of my mother-in-law's death. I brought this up with my wife, and she asked if I could skip the wedding to be with her at her mother's grave. I felt torn between two obligations that both meant so much to me. I wanted to be there for my wife as I had been for the past 3 years, but I also didn't want to miss my sister's wedding. When I talked to my sister about it, she was disappointed but understanding. She even offered to push back her wedding by a year, despite how much planning and effort had already gone into securing the venue and aligning everything. That offer touched me, but it also felt incredibly unfair to her to make such a huge sacrifice. In the end, I made the decision to attend my sister's wedding. I told my wife that while I sympathized with how difficult the day would be for her, I couldn't miss this once-in-a-lifetime moment for my sister. I explained that I've known my sister my whole life, and I needed to be there for her. My wife was visibly hurt and saddened by my decision, but she accepted it nonetheless. Even though I'm standing firm in my choice, I still feel conflicted about how it has affected her. I'm left wondering if I've made the right call. The grief over her mother is still so raw for her, but at the same time, I couldn't bring myself to abandon my sister on one of the most important days of her life. It's a situation where no matter what I chose, someone I care about would feel the impact of that decision. I just hope I haven't made things worse for my marriage by putting my sister's wedding first.